Welcome back, viewers. It's your half-ass reporter, James Kalm, the guy on the bike. And we are down here at the Lesley Heller Gallery on Orchard Street. We're actually here a couple of days before the opening of a show by this gentleman, Delano Dunn, Phantom Paradise. And, I thought the work was interesting, so I decided that we'll come in and do a little pre-opening preview and take a look. I was very impressed with the work, and not the least of which reasons is that I think Delano is using some pretty neat technical things, and he's got a very diverse list of mediums. Well, we'll start here. This is titled "It's Not Far Down to Paradise," 2019. Okay, listen to the list of materials here. We've got wallpaper, mylar, copper tape, silver tape, masking tape, paper, and shoe polish on board. Well, I bopped in here about a month ago and was talking to Lesley, and we happened to stroll into the back room, and she showed me a couple of Delano's smaller pieces and said she was going to have a show. So when I saw this, I got kind of interested and decided we'd do a little walkthrough. Let me read a little bit. Phantom Paradise, Delano Dunn's first solo exhibition with Lesley Heller Gallery, is a recollection of the 1992 LA riots from the perspective of a child who watched his neighborhood burn. 13 years old at the time, Dunn was unaware of the significance of the events happening around him, how they would shape the way people saw him, and how he would come to know exactly what it meant to be black and from the ghetto. Okay, so, well, it's kind of a brief narrative. We were just kind of talking about, I guess he goes and culls a lot of these images from newspaper and magazine articles of the time. Also, he's mixing these up with various other things, like this chunky black stuff is shoe polish, and it's got some paint by numbers panels that he's then collaged things on. This is titled "Make the Moment Feel Just Right," paper acrylic, paint by number, glitter, shoe polish, resin on board. This is 16 by 12. It's also interesting to see the way that he's kind of layering these images on within the various levels of the resin. This is titled "Fantasy, It Gets the Best of Me." Wallpaper, mylar, copper tape, silver tape, masking tape, paper, vinyl, resin, and shoe polish. Well, there is an interesting quality that you get when you're working with these poured layers of resin. You have a very polished, homogeneous surface. And in a lot of ways, that kind of relates to things like a TV screen or a computer screen. And, well, I've always been a fan of kitsch and kind of kitsch materials, shiny, flashy. things, I was thinking that in that way, some of this kind of relates to somebody like a Macarena Thomas, or even Thomas Lanigan Schmidt, at this point, one of the godfathers of the decorative kitsch movement of the late 70s, early 80s. But then when you kind of contrast that with this very funky black shoe polish, and I'm thinking that he might even heat the shoe polish up like encaustic. It's like a very materially, a very strong contrast. Also, there's a lot of symbolism that can be sussed out of his use of the various kinds of animals and photo collage elements that he's using. When I'm Sailing 2019, wallpaper, mylar, copper tape, silver tape, masking tape, paper, shoe polish on board. This piece, you really get a chance to kind of experience the drips or the flows of the shoe polish. Also, talking about his interesting use of kind of kitschy materials, shiny materials. This is all very high tech, and if you were a kid living in LA, in some of these neighborhoods, I remember Canal Street always had a couple of the plastic shops where you could go in and buy the disco tape and plexiglass and various kinds of things, usually to make signs with. And again, we've got, is that a cedar waxwing? I'm not sure. Something like that. And, he started out with that image of, maybe that's a Luda running away with paper towels, and he's enlarged it and repeated it. Oh, and there's kind of a embossed, looks like roof paneling that you would see in some of the old tenement homes. Just kind of stroll along and look at some of the smaller pieces. The works, both large and small scaled, layered paintings with collage and mixed media on panel, explore the artist's fleeting possession of innocence just days before its corruption. An innocence that allowed Dunn to see brilliant colors in the night sky as his neighborhood burned, or waved at trucks of National Guardsmen parading down the street without really understanding what was going on or why. And again, I like the kind of the depth within which these images are embedded. The paintings feature vintage paint-by-number landscapes, mostly from the 1960s and 70s, which Dunn had used as stand-ins for an idealized landscape of childhood. Okay. Layered upon these are images of rioters culled from news sources and online searches. These scenes are interspersed with images of birds and children's storybook animals. But, there is a nice actual formalistic quality to some of these. I think this is a very nice piece. This is titled Fuel Injection Passion 2019. And I don't know, this one seems like it's got a lot of resin there, so that the image is floating in about half an inch, 3/4 of an inch of resin. And then you've got these encroaching clouds of shoe polish. It's titled Passion, Love, and Pleasure, 2019. This is 10 by 8 1/4. Far Back to Sanity. This is a little larger scale, but again, we get to see the, there's a nice basic abstract formalism here with these diagonal stripes. We get a nice kind of a cloud or an umbrella where he really has collected a great spectrum of various kinds of films, leaves, tapes, shiny things. And a lot of this has got kind of a pearlescent quality, which is nice. And these are the kind of pieces that change. They kind of flicker as you walk back and forth in front of them. Things change, colors change. So we've got our buzzards eating the deer head. It's like a fox or a wolverine or something. Got kind of the aggressive animals, the predators, the raptors, and then you've got the more peaceable birds, meadowlark. This is the Canvas Can Do Miracles 2019. Actually, I'm also, I think Delano has kind of tapped into a lot of great art historical sources. I kind of had a little echo of Romare Bearden here with his kind of his nice color selection. And this little burst of, again, the tapes, metallics and foils and glitters. Let's see if we can capture some of the changing colors as the lights flash through this. Okay, we'll just... There are a bunch of small collages, and I believe that at least what looks like the little engraved forms are from Harper's Bazaar, maybe back in the 1860s. It's titled Make Me Feel My Paradise. Paper acrylic paint by number, glitter and resin on board. This is 10 by 8. And again, there's kind of a wonderful world of colors that are being kind of drawn out of the blacks, kind of the depths of the black resin. It's titled, I've Tasted Love So Many Times. 10 by 14 inches, 1999, paper, acrylic, paint by number, glitter, shoe polish, and resin on board. Okay, so we've got a lot of the paint by number picture showing through there. And again, our kind of the expanding cloud of the shoe polish. I think we'll wrap up looking at this one. This is All Caught Up in the Reverie, 2019. This is 40 by 35. Okay, so we start out with a kind of a very cuddly children's wallpaper. And we've got our images of the rioters. Or at least it's like running people. And then our formalist stripes of the composition. James Kalm reporting on Delano Dunn, Phantom Paradise, here at the Lesley Heller Gallery, 54 Orchard Street, on the Lower East Side. Okay, well, viewers, we went up the street and around the corner. Now we're going to run into the James Fuentes Gallery. And this is my usual schedule. It's 10 minutes before closing time. But I wanted to make a little stroll through this sculpture exhibition by Joe Minter. I stuck my head in and I was impressed. And if you've been watching either one of my channels for any period of time, you know I'm a big fan of outsider art and that's what they call it, Southern African American vernacular art. And well, I thought this was a nice example of some of the more interesting sculptural aspects of that. It's titled Old Rugged Cross. Mixed media, 67 by 36 by 21. Well, I was impressed, amused, astounded by the kinds of materials that Joe Mentor is using. And I have to say, I've done a little bit of this kind of assemblage, and I'll tell you that it's not easy, and one of the most important parts of that is like, where do you find the good stuff that you can put together? And then it's not only that, but it's how do you contrast all of the possible readings that you could get from a little object against another little object, and kind of orchestrate these combinations. The Ten Commandments: thou shalt not, there are not gods before me, thou shalt not worship any graven image, thou shalt not. Okay. Thought this was a good one. This is titled, My Engine is Running Hot. Mixed media, 64 by 35 by 18. Okay, so we've got parts of a Chevy. Oh gosh, that's somebody's old radiator. Well, I spent a couple of years working at Henry Fernandez's scrapyard, Pocatello, Idaho, and yeah, a radiator like that, back in those days, you could make yourself about 10 or 15 bucks on scrap. This was brass, mostly. Also, I love these bugs. He's got some real bugs stuck there on the radiator. That's funny. This is titled Longhorns. And it's a great use of very simple forms, but you can read them as bull's head. It kind of makes me think of the Picasso sculpture with the handlebars and the bicycle seat that somehow is magically transformed into a bull's head. And we got our chrome rims. Also, Joe uses a lot of these chains and hooks, which kind of gives you a very practical view of how something like this is held together. You might get involved in some more aesthetic points of doing this, but he's using the very most basic ways of propping up the sculpture. It's titled Buffalo Soldiers. Steel with mixed media. So we've got some gun stocks and these look like maybe World War I doughboy helmets. Also there's nice quality with the brown rust of the steel. This is a fun piece titled Bond, 2002. Mixed media. And okay, so even though this part of the mannequin looks like styrofoam, looks like it's been aged and maybe had rusty things leaning on it. It's all discolored. Komodo dragon. Joe Minter was born in 1943 in Birmingham, Alabama, where he lives and works today. In 1989, Minter began constructing his African village in America, a quarter-acre, densely packed, sculptural environment built around his home. The site is an intensely personal expression of an epic historic and cultural vision, driven by an awareness that much of the story of African American history and experience might never be told, and that the contributions of the thousands of people who took part in the battle of civil rights would be disregarded or erased. Okay. As I said, he's got a great way of picking his analogous forms. Those shovels and looks like leaf springs, maybe. This is Untitled. The Queen, 2012, mixed media. So I wonder if these pieces have all been brought in from his outdoor environment sculptures park that he's put together, because they all have this kind of nice patina and weathered look. Okay, this might be my favorite piece in the show. The Trail of Lynching. And yeah, so we've got a nice kind of burnt, weathered beam. And Joe has added a lot of these galvanized nails and chains. Okay, this kind of makes me think of the German artist Gunther Ucker, who was doing a lot of pieces with nails back in the 60s. And then we've got a bunch of aged shoe trees. You know, it really does kind of give you a sense of an effigy, or maybe the absence of a figure somehow. This piece is 89 by 26 by 26. James Caan sliding in just ahead of the closing bell. Here, James Fuentes Gallery reporting on Joe Minter. Sculptures, 1995 to 2012. You can like this, share, subscribe, recommend it to your friends, and you can leave your thoughts, ideas, comments, criticisms, and reviews below. I would just ask you to say thank you, Kate.